Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. So in today's video we're going to be looking at markets and when to sell and when to buy. Now this in theory sounds relatively straightforward. You want to buy it when it's as low as possible and you want to sell it when it's as high as possible. That way you are maximizing the amount of return that you get on the items that you have purchased. So the general premise behind it is, again, buy low, sell high. And it really is that easy. Or it is that easy to say. Now, in actual practice, it's a lot harder than just buy low, sell high. Because the point is, when do you know when the high is and when do you know when the low is? Now, the EVE markets are relatively straightforward. You don't have options, futures, and you don't have shorting, which seems to be the popular thing at the moment, or unpopular, depending on your perspective. Now, again, when looking at a graph, again with this one, it's very easy to say, well, you know, I'd buy around here and I'll sell around here. But looking at this graph for the thermal nuclear trigger units, now I generally trade these quite a lot or build these quite a lot or have done in the past. These are one of my preferred go-to items. And as you can see here, for a good period they were roughly about 35,000 ISK a piece, and they stayed like that for a good while. Now, I can't obviously tell what the graph is back here, but we'll go on this one as it is. So obviously, if you bought them here and the price rose, you would be selling them around here. Now, the problem is that obviously as the price rises, you're generally fighting against your own psychology because it's very hard. The reason that the vast majority of people lose while trading is because basically they don't follow their own rules. If I bought these at 35 and set my target that I was going to sell them at 40, it's very, very hard in general to sell them at 40, and especially when you can see that the price is rising. You end up holding the items generally longer than you would have done. So before you're actually taking the trade or doing the trading, you've set yourself a goal, and obviously when it smashes through there, you're still holding and holding, and basically you're getting greedy. I can't think of a better way of putting it than that. And then all of a sudden the price tanks, and then you're thinking, well, the price was up here. I could have sold it and made, say, 10 billion ISK if I'd sold it here when I bought it here. So I'll hold on because, well, it might go back up. And it doesn't. It continues to go down and down and down and down until it's actually lower than when you actually bought it, and now you're actually losing ISK. Instead of actually gaining the 10 billion that you were here, you're now losing ISK when we're down here. And this is generally why a lot of people that trade lose money in real life markets, especially day trading, because again, it's very hard to fight against your own greed psychology, and the vast majority of people don't have the necessary discipline in order to sell it at the point where they've said, I will sell it here, and if it falls down to 30, we'll sell it here. And so basically you end up waiting and waiting. Either you're waiting for it to go too high, or you're waiting for it to get back to the high, or it ends up going lower than what you bought it for, and then you hold it hoping it's going to go back up. And well, as we can see here, it never did. It went down and down and down and down. Now generally the nice thing about EVE is it doesn't always function especially the same as the normal markets. We have ups and we have downs, and there are no external factors as such generally affecting the market other than supply and demand, the few tweaks that CCP make. Now obviously with the thermal nuclear trigger units here, if we look at the general graph here, we can see that the low was around 30,000 all the way up to October, and the high was what, 43,000. So the problem, if we take the graph back, so if you were trading in these and were stockpiling them ready to sell, here would have been a fantastic place to be buying, because again, it's below the general low. There was no real reason that I can think of that the price suddenly tanked, but you can see that the volume there does actually drop off, and I can't think of a reason why that is, but for the time being we'll ignore that because it's inconvenient. So yeah, you would have been buying here, stockpiling, ready for the price to rise, and as we know from the graph, it never does actually rise, it just continues to drop and drop. Now obviously if you were buying here, you are now stuck with items that are worth less than when you bought them for. But that doesn't mean that you're out of pocket at this point. You can always add to your position. So assuming we know that the price will rise in the future, which again, generally you don't, but again with EVE market cycles you generally hope that will be the case, unless again CCP has changed something relatively fundamental in regards to what they're used for or how they're produced or how they're acquired, etc. So although we're buying them at 30, you can still add to your position at 25 as they are at the moment, on the hope that they will eventually go back up. And obviously the more that you add at the lower price, the more you dilute in the price that you initially bought them for. So if you bought them for 30,000 and now you're adding more at 25,000, you're obviously taking the overall average price that you've paid down. However, that doesn't mean that the price can't still drop further, but again we have leveled off at the 25k here. But basically reading the graphs isn't always as easy as it seems, because as we can see here, as I said, I don't know what it was, but 35 would have been an ideal buying point. Prices went up. If you had have bought them there, hopefully you sold them here, and again price drops back down, went under 35 this time, so you'd have been buying it around the 35, add into your position at about 32, selling again at 40, and as it come back down you'd have been buying as people look like they were doing here, adding to their either restocking on the items that they've sold, but then obviously the market drops, you could have added more there, the market drops, and by now you're starting to obviously invest quite a lot of ISK, depending on obviously how many you're buying and your stockpile and how long you've been doing it for, on the understanding that it's going to go up, and it hasn't, it's just gone down and down and down. Now obviously from this point, in order to get back to here, it's quite a jump, so we're going from, we've got to add 10k back onto it in order to get back to the point where we would initially have started buying. And so a lot of it comes down to, I won't say luck, but it comes down to an educated guess on where the market is going to go from this point. Now, as I said, personally, I believe it was going to rise from this point. I don't see how it can drop much lower due to the amount of time, effort, minerals, etc. that go into making the trigger unit. Obviously, it's moon mining and the works in order to get it. So there is a minimum that people generally will work for. Yeah, again, it's an educated guess, and there's good examples of this, and I'm doing the same at the moment. I've been buying the Fullerides because these have been low, and as you can see these have dropped off. That is generally due to moon mining becoming more popular, yada yada yada. But the price is going back up, and the price has risen quite sharply. Now I got a good number of these at 666. I bought 9 million, 10 million's worth. Yeah, probably 11 million's worth of units, and obviously the price has risen quite sharply. Now that's not because I'm fantastic at trading or knew something that anybody else didn't. I took my chance. It looked like it had bottomed out. It looked like the market was starting to correct itself and going back up, and I was in the right place at the right time to purchase some. Now the problem that I'm going to have is, where do I sell? Do I wait until it gets back to its high levels? Obviously, as somebody that's holding potentially 11 million units, I would like to sell at its high, because I would double the amount of ISK that I'm going to make if I sell it at the 1,250 mark, just under doubling my ISK. So yes, personally I'd like to sell it here, but will it ever get back here? Will it take months? Will it take a year? I don't know. And this comes back to the point of knowing if and when to sell, or giving yourself a rough target. I was holding quite a lot of Megasite, and if you recall some of my previous videos, I think I had 9 million units. I bought that for between 360 and 390, so we'll round it off to 400. And that was basically when the mineral patch dropped, or scarcity started. I think that was scarcity. It was one of the iterations that CCP had done. So I bought it about the 400, and obviously it's climbed, it got to 600, and it dropped back off to 450. So obviously I was kicking myself for not selling it here, but as we've discussed earlier, knowing when the exact high is going to be is incredibly hard and nigh on impossible to know. And if it was that easy, then again people would make, huge amounts of money, and people do make lots of ISK doing this, and money in real life, but being able to call the very top of a graph is incredibly hard to do. And as I said, price dropped back off, but I held and it went back up, and we've got to what, 850 by the looks. We'll round it down to 800. So potentially I doubled the ISK that I had. Now that's all and great, assuming that you sell it at that point, and I didn't. I held on to it hoping it was going to go up. But again, the reason I held on to it thinking it was going to go up is twofold. First of all, obviously the scarcity patch. The price had been up and it was going up quite sharply, but as you see, it hit the ceiling of where it was going to get and it came down quite sharply. So I was stuck. Not stuck, but it's much easier, especially in EVE, to sell items when the market is going up than it is coming down. When it's coming down, basically, you are continuously chasing the market, having to update your orders, and that can obviously eat into your profits quite substantially. And so, looking at it in hindsight, yes, I should have sold at about this mark, but I didn't, and as you can see here, I've been selling it for 612, which is quite a lot off its high, but again, I don't know which way it's going to go from here. And as I said, they're twofold. The reason I held it because of scarcity and the fact that minerals or megasite used to be, or is generally, all the minerals at the start of the game and for a good period of time had an amount that CCP wanted them to roughly sell for. So I think titanium was 2.5 ISK, might have been slightly less. Pyrite was 4 to 6, and so on and so on. And I'm pretty sure I recall megasite being around 3,600 to 5,000. So I was hoping that basically the scarcity, they were trying to get back to them levels. And obviously if it went back to around the 3,000 mark, I stood to make quite a substantial amount of ISK. But it hasn't. As I said, it's dropped off and I've sold. Now, as I said, in hindsight, it's easy to turn around and say, well, oh God, I should have sold here, but I didn't. And that's half of trading, is basically, again, getting rid while you're ahead, basically, and not holding on. Because, again, I could continue to hold the megasite, and it could continue to go down quite just as easy as it could go back up. And, again, in hindsight, or in a month's time, it'll be easy to say, well, you should have held it because it went back up to 800. It was easy to see. But is it? Again, can you tell which way it's going to go from here? Because I must admit, I have absolutely no idea. And that's half of the problem that's, I say, with the station trading, that it's knowing when to drop the stuff and when not. And for, every now and then you're wrong. Sometimes you are kind of right. And I was holding the power circuits, and I sold these for, as you can see, 451,000. I bought them at 270,000. So I bought them around here. And again, it's very easy to congratulate yourself on a job well done, and that I'm a market genius and I knew exactly what I was doing. So again, I sold at 451, which was almost at the top of the market. Again, we've had a spike since then, so 12% up. But as you can see on the graph, we'll go on the graph, that I pretty much sold at the very height of where it is at the moment. And whether it drops back off, I can see it kind of dropping off, but whether it does or not. But if it does, I can't sit here in good conscience, and pretty much most people won't. That I didn't sell it because I knew that it was going to drop off. I sold it because it had made enough profit that I was happy with it. And again, this could spike up to 1 million. I have no idea what it's going to do, but at the price that I bought it for, again, it was bouncing off the low points, and it seemed like a good idea to hold. Now, obviously, it depends on the amount of ISK that you have in your wallet and how long you're willing to keep hold of something. I've kept these from around September, so 4 months, 5 months potentially. When did I sell these? January, halfway through Jan. So I've held these for about 5 months. So and so, as I said at the start of the video, that the general gist is that you buy low, you sell high. If it gets lower than you have bought it at, then add to your position to bring down the average cost and hold. Obviously be careful as you add to your position that you're not over adding to your position, waiting for the price to go back up, and then just sit on it and hold with the expectation that sooner or later, hopefully, unless you've bought at a stupid price, the price should rise and you will be in profit. And that is the crux or the gist of station trading. So with that, thank you for listening. I hope that gave you a bit of an insight into station trading, into the do's and don'ts, when to buy, when to sell, and what to do if it starts going wrong. And with that, thanks for listening. Talk to you later.